Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for Wednesday. It is the 27th of March. Another very mixed day in the market. It's tried to maybe get running early, carrying on that end of day candle yesterday, but really wasn't happening. And just another battle between the bulls and bears here today. Still very undecided as we get past the halfway point of the week. And hello, Patricia. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to everybody. I hope you all had a fantastic day, both in and out of the market. Very mixed bag here today in the market, no doubt about that. On the earnings front, we do have just a couple of names. We have PVH coming out, ACN, both S&P 500 companies, as well as Lulu. All of those companies are either reporting tonight after the close or tomorrow before the open. Pretty light on the earnings front, but a few names out there that maybe will have some traders' attention. We will have to see. Taking a look at the S&P 500, here's our opening candle. Of course, yesterday we kind of had that last little volley at the end of the trading day, kind of carried over on the open, but just no follow through, and then started the usual drift back down, took out that support level, drifted again before catching our footing kind of the second half of the day and ending the day kind of sideways. Not a whole lot to see here, although we are kind of developing, looking at an hourly chart, kind of developing a little bit of a trading range. So from a really short-term perspective, I think we can kind of think that our line in the sand is down here at around 2780 for support on the S&P, up here just shy of 2830. Seems like we've started to develop a little bit of a trading range that we can keep an eye on. Of course, that high and low are going to coincide with yesterday's high and Monday's low, which certainly makes a lot of sense if we kind of zoom back a little bit. For me, I'm kind of business as usual. It doesn't look like the pullback is ready, and I'm not sure it's going to be ready this week. Our short-term level of support in the form of that Monday low is kind of that first line in the sand. So as long as we continue to hold this support level, I'm not going to be too stressed one way or the other. If that support does give out, I think maybe taking a step back into a little more neutrality until things either break a real swing support level, giving me a very clear bearish signal, or kind of develop, maybe they hold these moving averages and a new signal develops. As long as we're not closing below that, I still will continue to have a bullish bias personally. Close below that, though, I could understand kind of a step into neutrality, and probably would be there personally. That would kind of give us some lower highs, and not anything huge, but some lower highs, and of course lower lows via the hypothetical break. I still, from my point of view, with the way the chart looks right now, really don't think I would be bearish unless we took out this swing support down here at 2720 personally. So not really stressing just yet. Support is continuing to hold, but no follow through in the market. And I think that's what we're really seeing right now is nobody's quite sold one way or another. I want to be bullish, but, I've been kind of scared a little bit with the increased volatility and the behavior of the market. Hasn't really impacted the charts dramatically, but maybe it's impacted us a little bit emotionally. I don't know. Maybe that's just my take on it. If we can get kind of back above, this point here, I will definitely be happy. Wouldn't mind seeing us go sideways for a few more days, get us a nice little trading range, and then break out of it next week. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for personally, a little bit more back and forth here on Thursday and Friday. Still have a hard time making too much of a bearish argument, but that can and will change if we start to break some support levels. Over in the NASDAQ, very similar price action, working back down towards that Monday low, catching that general ballpark as our intraday support. And hey, Micah, great to see you. Hope you are doing well. caught our support there, little bit of a rally to the upside. So again, we're kind of stuck in this short-term ranginess. It's only 3 candles. It just seems like it's more sometimes. For me, 72, that breakout point continues to be the primary support level that I'm looking for on the NASDAQ. If, you know, and I'm going bearish in the market, probably isn't going to start with the NASDAQ. It might extend into the NASDAQ if we do continue to see more selling, but probably not the first area that I expect at least to see clear sell signals develop. 72, I do believe, is important to the NASDAQ from a support perspective, though. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on staying above that if I'm going to continue to look overall at tech from a bullish point of view. Over in the Dow, another crazy day of going nowhere, trading between all of the moving averages in one day, working very close to the 50 here today, topping out just in the top of those falling 20 and 9 moving averages. Still a little neutral or cautious with the Dow Jones. I still, while it's not pretty, I still think that the NASDAQ can turn into a bullish retracement. I don't think I can say the same thing on the Dow's chart right now. So still a little bit neutrality. Would like to see it get in on the action. If we do see some buyers from a seller's point of view, you know, I think, you know, for me at least, the break of this swing support is going to be that bearish signal, which I would definitely call a bearish signal. All of a sudden, we've got our 9 falling below our 20. That's not a bullish signal. We're already there. Of course, we're still above the 50, but if we break that support, well, that's no longer true either. So I think this is a pretty significant support level for the Dow Jones in my mind. And over in RUT, just another day of trying to figure out what it wants to do with itself after placing lower highs and lower lows, giving me, you know, I've got to give that a little bit of a bearish downgrade whenever I see that, working back into these averages over the last couple of days. And we're just having that battle. Do we want to break back up above them, getting folks in at least on some sort of a neutrality point of view, or is this going to develop into a bearish retracement? You know, we've already made lower highs and lower lows, and if this is the only thing that we could see, we'd say, well, hey, you know, made consecutive lower highs, lower lows. This looks like a bearish retracement, although not a very pretty one, mind you. So I don't think we're there just yet, but definitely in my mind, the most bearish of the indexes right now, the only one that is clearly, in my opinion, broke through support, failed at levels that should be enticing to buyers. And that, again, that's kind of what we're seeing in the market, just a couple of things showing some weakness. Is it going to, you know, bleed into more, or, you know, are we going to get those buyers coming back in and pull up, you know, some of the, you know, the non-contributors, we'll call them. So not a lot changed, though, still using those averages, primarily the 50, it looks like, but now we've got to deal with these falling short-term averages as well. Really, for me to get back on board with the Russell, I'm going to have to break resistance way the heck up here. Or develop something new, which may be the way it needs to play out. So not a lot has changed over there. So really, we saw a lot of movement. At one point, it looked like maybe it was going to be a pretty bearish day, but everything did come off of those lows pretty nicely with some pretty long tails on the different index candles. So giving us reason to believe that the bulls are at least trying. They are still interested, you know, just maybe not as interested as they would have liked to be or were not too long ago. Developing a little bit of a doji party over in the material sector, just another day hanging around that support level. I think that every day that passes here, and this one's kind of a fun one to go look at, maybe a 30-minute chart, just to kind of see, look at this craziness. You know, we know that this is a significant support level, a swing support level, but look at all of the bounces that we're getting off of that 5420 or thereabout support zone. Certainly that is a very important price, at least for the time being, on the material sector. I expect that to be the line. You know, as long as we're holding this, I'm okay with it. If that breaks, I think you have to call it a bearish signal. Not much has changed there. We're building up some pressure. I mean, basically 4 days in a row of using that low, coming off of it every time. One of these days, one of two things is going to happen. We're either going to throw in the towel, let that break down and see where that takes us, or we're going to say, I trust it. You know, I want to trust the bounce off of support, but I don't. And so, but every day that holds, if I start to see some upward movement, maybe that can change my opinion. So not a lot has changed. Still a very important line, in my opinion, in the materials sector. Definitely one that I'm watching very closely, even if I'm not looking at materials as a potential area to trade, that can have some impact on the market one way or the other, right? Over in the energy sector, just another day in this trading range. Really, for me, not much to see here. We are seeing some individual companies pushing resistance. We had PXD was definitely an interesting looking one here today, kind of running right into resistance. So we got a pretty clear level of resistance. These are an exploration and production company. Pretty clear level of resistance. Haven't broken that just yet, at least in my mind. They haven't. Not a lot of resistance above them. So if we can get that break, whether it's these guys or somebody else, who knows? But there is some room for these guys to work if we can ever get through that resistance, at least in my mind. I continue to watch and wait for that to happen. I still like it as a signal. It just is having a hard time doing it. And the one day it did was probably the worst day in 2 months to try to break resistance on last Thursday, right? Because everything that broke resistance on Thursday, well, maybe everything's a stretch, but most things gave it back the very next day. Continue to watch this battle. There are definitely interesting breakout type of candidates out there within this sector. If it's interesting to you, just having a hard time getting that final push. Over in finance, just another day hanging out below the breakdown point. You guys that know kind of where I am with finance. Overall, I'm much more bearish on the banks than the sector as a whole. They're the ones that are breaking down or have already broken down, showing a lot of weakness. We are still seeing other areas, the financial tech, like FISV, the American Expresses. Some of them look okay, and to me, at least from a bullish point of view. So this is an area I'm going to be cautious from a bullish mindset, no doubt about it. Very split within this sector right now, in my opinion. It's really the banks that are causing most of the bearish pressure from a technical point of view. At least that's what it looks like to me, and I continue to believe that. So we're just hanging out below that resistance level. You've had a lot of those banks, as you guys know, already break those support zones. Other ones like Goldman Sachs is just hanging out. Another doji party at support on Goldman Sachs. Hasn't broke down yet, maybe won't break down, but it's doing the dance right at that support zone. So an area I still think we have to look at fairly cautiously from a bullish point of view. Are seeing sell signals broadly on the sector, and certainly some weakness over in the banks continues to concern me from that bullish point of view. Industrials, much like the material sector, continue to have an epic battle at support. Support should be hard to break, and that's what we're seeing in a lot of areas in the market right now. We are putting up fights. No clear winner, just like the material sector, no clear winner just yet. For me, not a whole lot has changed. To break above this resistance at around 75 would be a bullish signal for me. A break below this support would certainly be a bearish signal for me. Hanging out at that support level, I would understand the bullish argument. I always understand the bullish buy at support argument, even though I usually prefer wait for it to establish upward movement and break some sort of resistance. The logic is pretty straightforward. Hey, if we buy it here, put our stop loss just a hair below this point, we're not risking all that much. If the support breaks, we leave, lose a small amount. If support holds, we have room to go, right? So risk to reward wise, it does make sense to me. I'm not very comfortable doing that as a general rule, certainly not in this particular case. So, I mean, but that's what we have to think about it. Everybody's not me, everybody's not you, right? We need all sorts of different kinds out there, and traders continue to be willing to come in at this support level right now for better or worse. Very important battle here, just like the material sector. I would have thought maybe we'd have a little more clarity by Wednesday, because we kind of talked about that on Friday as we sold into that support level. But here we are, just 3 dojis in a row at those support levels. Nobody's quite sold one way or the other. So it makes me feel better to not be sold too. I know I'm not alone. Over in tech, pretty steep selling at some point in time here today as the day hit its lows, but we did come up pretty strong off of those intraday lows. Maybe we'll go in and just look at a short-term chart. So we kind of had that up early, on the open, really drift down, but second half of the day, a lot of upward momentum here on the 5-minute chart. So again, it's one of those things, hard to say that things are going to be great for new bullish entries in my mind tomorrow. The pullback's kind of been beat up a little bit. It doesn't look as pretty as we might like it to. Certainly not as pretty as our last pullback, where it just kind of drift down, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, finally had that intraday momentum, broke that previous day's high and got running. Doesn't mean that can't and won't happen. Just right now, with the way that we've seen price action this week, it's kind of beat up some of those pullback type of trade setups. Maybe they need a little bit of time to reset. I still like this. As you guys know, if I like the NASDAQ, I probably like the tech sector. 72 on the ETF, much like the NASDAQ itself, kind of that first, and primary line in the sand from a support level point of view. Did see some nice buying off of those lows, holding up here today. Still going to need another day. I mean, at this point, it's almost, it's Wednesday is over. Hopefully we get 2 more days within these ranges, and then we try to break whichever way we want to break next week. That's what I'm hoping for. Is that too much to ask? Probably, but I'm going to ask for it anyway. So never hurts to ask, right? Over in staples, a little bit of profit taking, but really not a whole lot to see here as we continue to hold our breakout point, continue to be above all of our moving averages. Don't really have a ton of resistance until we work into that 56.50 area between 56.50 and 57. Clearly, we do have some previous price points in there, but not a lot of resistance until that point. Continues to be an area that I'm very open to from a bullish perspective personally, after making an earn it, right? You guys know I made it earn it. I was not willing to put faith that it was going to break that resistance, but another day above that, certainly not a bad thing. We're starting to pull away a little bit from the breakout point, and all that means is just mentally in my head, hey, if we pull back a little bit, that's not a bad thing. Pulling back into that 55 range or this old breakout zone, perfectly reasonable thing if that's the way it wants to go. But overall, I think you still have to like where this sector is. Personally, I do like it. It earned it. It earned it. So if I had to say slightly bullish, and I'm pretty conservative, when we do our scoreboards, if I put minus or plus 30, it means I'm really bullish or bearish. So I would probably put myself at a, 40, but that is, maybe another person's 30, in this. So, and hey, Marcelo, good to see you. So I would say for me, I'm probably at about a 40 bull, but for putting that in other coaches' terms, that probably would be closer to a 30 for a bull, if that makes sense. My range is usually 50 to 30. Very rarely do I get anything into the 25-yard line. I can't even remember the last time I got anything into the 20. That's just my personal approach to it. So, yeah, I think this could be an interesting cash flow area, no doubt about that. If we can find some good premiums on some of these stocks, have some interesting characters in there right now. You do have the one kind of laggard is Nike. And again, there's always somebody out there that's kind of going against the grain. Little bit of weakness over in Nike as you can kind of see after, kind of that move down on earnings, working back into that old support level, finding resistance there around that 50-day moving average. It's always easier, from a broad sector perspective, of some of the bigger names aren't going against it. Not that they necessarily are, but they are challenging some resistance. So yeah, I do like this from a bullish point of view personally, and that is how I will be continuing to look at it. I like the break. I waited a long time for the break, as you guys know. I really wanted to see it before I was willing to get involved with it. But having broken above that, really do like this area. Really, I have a hard time seeing how staples really struggle unless the market really starts selling off quickly, which of course usually takes everything down with it, right? If the market continues to churn or remain bullish, maybe these guys aren't the fastest movers, but I have a hard time seeing how they're going to lead the market, from a bearish perspective, I guess, if that makes sense. Over in utilities, a little bit of profit taking here today as we continue to just be a juggernaut. Coming off of that 9 EMA at the intraday low. Again, we see this a lot on these hot stocks, hot areas. Traders don't need many excuses, right? They can jump in very, very quickly. Certainly a little bit of bearish activity. It would make sense to see some profit taking here. I'm not predicting that. I'm not going to bet against utilities because don't forget, we also hit a new high. We do hit a new all-time high on this ETF, even with the pullback all the way into that 9 EMA. Maybe these things do need to kind of consolidate a little bit. No problem, Marcelo. Great to see you and have a great afternoon, my friend. maybe a little consolidation would be all right. Maybe a pullback would be all right. I'm not going to, bet against utilities by any stretch of the imagination, though. It does not take much for them to go up these days. It continue to be a very strong area, no doubt. We continue to see quite a bit of volatility on the other side of things in the healthcare sector. You did have CNC by themselves, one of their rivals, competitors, I don't know. So the big gap down on the news. They are buying WCG WellCare plans, and they kind of just the other side of the coin for WellCare plans. So you have CNC purchasing for 15, I think it was 15 billion, and some stock. I'm not exactly sure the details, but that definitely made some waves in the sector here early in the trading day. Just continues to be a very tale of two worlds. ABMD, just another absolute, whoops, I guess it helps if I put a in there. Just another rough day after breaking down, at support level yesterday on quite a bit of volume. Another pretty big day of selling here today into some pretty significant support. And I think you could even argue that we broke that. So we are seeing, that's I don't know, I wouldn't call that a break, but I think maybe somebody more aggressive might, but it's close. We're testing a major level of support, a lot of selling pressure. So it's kind of went out of just those healthcare plans into other areas of the market. But as we've talked before, on the other side of things, you have Lillies that are looking just fine. TMOs and some of these different companies are, pushing new highs on a pretty regular basis. So this continues to be an area that I do think we have the ability to kind of treat it as a stock picker sector right now. Just want to not be too crazy one way or another. Go with the trend. We always want to do that. But I don't think it's one of those sectors that I don't think the sector is going to necessarily drag me with it one way or the other. I know it certainly can, but it's sometimes you can just buy because the sector is going up, right? At least in hindsight, you can do that. Doesn't feel like that type of a sector to me right now. Still, a lot of things are looking interesting from a bull point of view. A lot of things are looking interesting from a bear point of view. I think we want to continue to be careful there. Still trying to get our feet, going here on the discretionary sector. We do continue to hold that 112 break, which I do consider a good signal from a bullish point of view. I still believe that if the market does, end up this being a pullback, and I think it's really too soon to say one way or another. I still lean it, and I will say that until we actually break some support. If the market wants to run, personally, I do believe this is an area that will benefit from a bullish run in the market, as I have really kind of felt since it broke out, as you guys know. So not a lot of, decision, I guess, today, and certainly not in the discretionary either, but certainly an area that I continue to like. Still don't have a lot of resistance. And I guess, an easy way to look at it is if this 112 or thereabouts, this zone, I think we could probably call, that low point here our support level at this point in time, or at least a support level. If this holds, not a lot of reason from a technical point of view that we can't fill up this space. I still am interested in this from a bullish point of view. Personally, a break below this low, a little bit of a sell signal, probably not a bearish signal to me, more so a neutrality type of a signal. Over in real estate, much like utilities, working back into that 90 MA, as we were selling, fairly aggressively early in the day. We kind of had that first, 15-20 minute pop, and then, drifted away all the way into the halftime report, where right about there we kind of started to catch our footing. And so it looked like one of those days where everything wanted to be red. Everything was going to sell. And as things started to work into these support zones, into these moving averages, buyers did step back in. That's why I still have a little bit of faith from a bullish point of view. We worked into support on so many of these things, and buyers were saying, well, yeah, maybe you're freaking out though for nothing right now at market. That is where I am personally, but I'm never going to pretend to know what the market's going to do tomorrow, because that's a fool's errand. Just what it's likely to do, right? So another good solid charting, nothing's changed on our chart, still above everything here. I enjoyed that music, the intro, so much. He did it on Monday, and then in the halftime report, and then yesterday we had technical difficulties. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I'm a big fan. I'll miss that intro. We'll keep that one for next time Matt and Tim are away. So hopefully won't be the last time we take over for a day or two. I had a lot of fun hanging out with the halftime crew, and we'll miss it tomorrow. Maybe I'll pop in and try to knock the door down. So, although I'll tell you what, it really changes the way my days feel, because, I pretty regimented in when I do everything. You know, when I look at, that's why we do the market recap at 4:30 Eastern. I didn't even realize it was an inconvenient time for other people, because that's when you do your walk through the market. In my head, you know, so regimented. So it really kind of makes my days feel like they go by really quick. But I very much enjoyed hanging out with the halftime crew, or the No Justice Squad, as we call you now. So over in real estate, not a lot to say. Again, we did come off of that 9 EMA pretty nicely off of those lows, just like the market. So probably big picture, nothing has changed on our charts. Technically, more short term, buyers are still willing to put money on the line at what they consider decent prices. And you know, probably shouldn't expect that to change, as you know, these areas, real estate, utilities, that's how they've been behaving for quite some time now, right? Any excuse is a good reason, it seems. Even if you don't agree with the excuse, it seems like it's a good reason. So, and lastly, over in communication services, a little bit of a rocky day working into support. I do think we can call this 4650 zone a little bit of support. I will take a little bit of a step into neutrality if that does falter, or at least away from bullishness. If that falters, hasn't happened yet, did come off of that support. Facebook continues to hold up okay. You did see some pretty good selling in Google throughout the day. I mean, a pretty big candle. I mean, it could have been a different day. We could have been having a much different conversation had buyers not been willing to come in about the halfway point of the day. Very nice tail develops. We did see some momentum develop the second part of the day in Google, just like the rest of the market. But a little bit scary that how quickly it was selling here when things weren't going so well. So a little bit less of a fan today than maybe I was even yesterday. You know, I'm generally not the biggest fan of the communication services sector, as everybody knows. That's probably the worst kept secret out there. But the break below this would, you know, make me concerned. You know, I probably wouldn't look at it from a bearish perspective. I'd call this swing, and we're lining up with our 50-day moving average, probably the tipping point for me right now. But yeah, I'm not having a ton of faith. Now, if Google can catch some footing and get moving back up, you guys don't need me to tell you how important the Googles and Facebooks are to this ETF. So keep an eye on this support zone. I don't know that we should call it a significant signal if it breaks, but I would definitely call it a signal if it breaks. So mostly the moral of the story today is just battle. Support is tough. It's hard to break stuff. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we see things just fly right through support or resistance, and it's not that big of a deal. But we're seeing that in action this week as these support levels continue to be where our battle lines are drawn. I don't think we have a definitive winner just yet, but other than our, you know, Russell, which I would argue has broke support, and the financial sector, which has broke support, still holding up in the other sectors, at least for one more day. Over in the dollar, just continuing that run, working into that $97 mark. We're now kind of in that area where anywhere from 97, you know, into that 97.10 or 15 range can act as some resistance for us. If we can clear that top of that range, well, we do have a pretty good history of clearing that and running to 97.50 or 60 or so. So it looks like we're still have the bulls in control of this sideways ranging market right now. So for me, that doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm still, as you guys know, waiting for it to, you know, break one way or the other. But it looks like we're still kind of have bullish, you know, bullish sentiment in control. Watch this resistance zone. We've seen, you know, sometimes it, you know, it's not a big deal. We see it run quickly, but we've seen a lot of history at around 97 as a resistance zone. So definitely something that we want to be keeping an eye out for. Gold not able to really build any momentum off of the break of a few days ago. It just not behaving well, right? And we've talked a lot about it all over the place. I don't really know anybody who's been, you know, looking at it from a swing trading perspective as of late. I know I certainly am not. Now, with that said, if we can develop a higher low, and this is kind of a next week potential thing, if we can develop a higher low and make another run at this resistance, I could see a scenario where if we develop nicely over the next week or so, maybe a break above that could be an interesting signal for me. That's a lot of ifs. The bears are still very much in control, so it's not a given that they're going to create that higher low and take another run at that resistance by any stretch of the imagination. Still volatile, still not particularly well behaved in my opinion, still kind of shying away from it. 1325 continues to be resistance. We're kind of in this soupy area. Where do you call it 13? Do you call it the 50-day moving average? Do you call it something in between, the old breakout point? Not a lot of clarity in my mind on gold right now. It could develop, but that's a next week conversation, I guess. We do have the bears in control right now, and 13. While I do think we can look at it as a bit of a support zone, I don't personally think it's a big support zone any longer. At first I did when it first happened. I think everybody did with the development. I'll respect it because I think other people still will, but I don't really look at it as a strong level of support. On the other side of things, you have silver just continuing to struggle. Had our brief close above 1550 the other day, no momentum, just so much resistance above it. Again, for me, nothing has really changed. If I have to do something, it's bearish on silver and bullish on gold. But luckily, I don't have to do anything. I want them to shake out, get a little bit more clarity one way or the other. Right now, we are approaching a pretty respectable support level at 15.25. On silver. That was a pretty major floor, pretty major breakdown once that was taken out. We have the 200. I don't know how much of a support level. I'll respect it, but I wouldn't expect it to act as a strong level with it sloping down like that. I wouldn't expect that to be a strong level. If this 15.25 zone breaks, I wouldn't be all that surprised to work back towards that $15 mark. That's the line. That's a big one in my mind. 15 is a big level of support. On the resistance side of things, I think you have to once again worry that 1550 is a big deal. Still, we closed above it once, but no momentum. I'm going to call that a fake out, I guess. Lots of resistance above us. Continues to be a chart that I don't want anything to do with it. Natural gas almost made our conversation really interesting. Broke down that support zone here today and was really, really selling, but came off of those lows. I want to try to find a time frame that's going to let us kind of see this clearly. Let's see how the hourly is going to work there. Yeah, there we go. I guess that one works. We took out that support zone. We really faltered. Selling definitely picked up once. Oh yeah, we broke that. But then we caught our footing, rallied back up, closing right in that ballpark here today. I can't call this a break personally. I can't call it at least a clean break of resistance, and for some reason my looks like my chart just decided it didn't want to let me change time frames. There we go. I'm not calling it a break. I'm calling it a tentative break, but with the price action here today, I don't think you can call this a clean break. If we continue to see downward pressure going into the later part of the week, I will probably change my tune. I would definitely say it's more, it's not a buy, but I'm not ready to call it a break to the downside. You may be, or maybe I am tomorrow. From a support point of view, if we do fall below this support level down here around 257 to the 260 range, kind of that primary level of support in my mind, with our very significant support at 250. So I thought it was going to be a big red candle early in the day. I had to bring it up in the halftime report because it was the first time in forever it had thought about doing anything to get out of a range. But by the time it was all said and done, right back into that range, at least right at that range here on a pretty decent looking hammer candlestick. Not interested in whatever it wants to do tomorrow. It can do without me, but interesting that we're finally seeing some movement. It was interesting that short-term price action, when that did break, there was some pretty quick selling because, that was a pretty easy one to see. That's a lot of support. I imagine that's an easy place to want to sell. And of course, lastly, in crude, EIA numbers come out, and a little bit of supply, and so a little bit of selling here today. Really, though, for me, I think it's more the technicals right now than anything else. We are developing a pretty clear little top, and it's ugly and it's not happened yet, but we topped out here, pulled back, worked back into that just north of 60, about $30. I'm sorry, $60.30, pulled back. If we can work another run into that resistance level, it's going to look an awful lot like a cup and handle pattern. I know that's a lot of ifs, but if we can push through that resistance, I do think that is another bullish signal. Personally, having a hard time. I mean, we clearly have developed a little bit of resistance just north of $60 for whatever reason. That continues to be an area. of resistance for oil on a support level. I think, you know, approximately 58, this breakout point, the 20 moving average, kind of the primary support levels I will be keeping an eye on. I still feel like it wants to break, just hasn't happened yet. We'll see if it does. Never surprised if resistance wins. It's a good way to live. So I don't think anything really new has happened here today on crude. As support at around 58, resistance just north of $60. I don't really see a lot of resistance. If we can take out this short-term top, working in towards that 200-day moving average would be my expectation. So we'll see that where these guys decide to take us here tomorrow. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do the market recap on an eventful yet not really much change type of a day. Did see some movement. I think one thing we can see, with the price action, is traders are a little more jittery right now. We were pretty quick to sell here today. So I think we're a little more, no one's trusting anything right now. But on the other side of the coin, they are trusting support. They are trusting these support zones, at least so far. So we're just in the middle of a really, really good fight right now between the bears and the bulls. It's been a little while since we've seen one of these, right? Usually we don't see 3-4 day battles between the bulls and bears. We've been used to a lot of selling or a lot of buying over the last little while. So definitely an interesting market. We'll see where this one takes us going into tomorrow. I'm going to be keeping an eye on these little support zones that have developed in the NASDAQ, in particular in the S&P 500, though. Break below that, I would get a little more cautious personally. Hasn't happened yet. Very well may not happen. We are very undecided. I think this is one of those that short term at least really could go either way. So, hey, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And great to have you with us, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do us for today. But as always, thank you for joining me. It's always more fun to do this with you guys than on my own. Like I said, I've been going through my own market recap for a long time at around 2:30 Utah time for a long time. It's a lot more fun to do it with you guys. So thank you so much for joining me. Always a lot of fun. If you are new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And feel free to join us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter. You can also find me at Frank Martin 23 on Twitter as well. So pop on over and say hello. Always nice to have a few more Twitter friends as I try to figure out the world of Twitter. I'm slow, but I'm getting there. So I will let you guys get out of here. But you guys have a fantastic Wednesday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you here in the recap tomorrow. I don't know if I'll see you in the halftime report or the No Justice show tomorrow or not. We'll see where that one takes us. But I'll definitely see you guys same time and channel here tomorrow afternoon for the market recap. So thank you so much, everybody. You guys have a fantastic afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone. And if still here, I just hit the wrong button. I don't know how to actually get out of YouTube if I go that way. So now I'm going to stop the live stream. So thanks, everybody. You guys have a great day.